and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we continue our King Kong retrospective with the very divisive 1976 King Kong, directed by John Guillermin. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the Alex Van Helsing series from HarperCollins. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire, the musician behind our opening music, and co-creator of Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Hello. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
As I said last episode, for the duration of this retrospective, I wish to be referred to as the eighth wonder of the world.
The eighth wonder of the world. I'm going to get it one of these weeks. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
I'm content to be the ninth wonder if Drew's the eighth wonder.
Okay.
Wonders everywhere. A wonder for everyone.
We have such wonders to show you. According to Wikipedia, King Kong is a 1976 American monster film produced by Dino De Laurentiis, directed by John Guillermin. It is a modern remake of the 1933 classic film of the same name about a giant ape captured and imported to New York City for exhibition. It features special effects by Carlo Rambaldi. It stars Jeff Bridges, Charles Grodin, Jessica Lange. In her first movie, she was a model and she was picked up to make this film. The film was the fifth highest grossing film of 77 and the seventh of 1976. It won an Academy Award for visual effects and it was nominated for best cinematography and best sound. And in other words, this movie was a huge hit and also received Oscar nominations when it came out. We're going to get our opening thoughts on King Kong 1976. This is one that the people on our Facebook page have really wanted to hear what we were going to say about it. So let her rip. Joya, what are your thoughts?
Well, having seen the new version, of course, I really enjoyed that, and so I'm trying not to compare it to that one so much, but it's a little hard because I really enjoyed the one from last week, the 2017, whatever this year is, version. However, I think it's okay. I mean, I don't think it stands up to the new one incredibly well, but I think it's okay. I, as a feminist, have a really hard time with the Jessica Lange character because she's just so stereotypically dingy and sex kitteny. She was a model before this, and she's beautiful. I mean, she's absolutely beautiful, but the character just is so shallow, and there's so many choices that they make for the character and that the character makes that I just really disagree with. I think that the monsters is pretty good. I love the hydraulic arm that they use, the giant arm that she's in. I think it would make an awesome ride at an amusement park where you sit in it and the giant fingers close around you and the whole thing lifts up. Apparently, when they made it, they had it ready to show to what's his name? The director, the producer?
Dino De Laurentiis?
Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to find this thing. It's just a really funny
Carlo
thing.
Rambaldi, the special effects guy?
Yeah, I guess so. Hang on. Okay, no, I'm sorry. It was Dino De Laurentiis. So Dino De Laurentiis comes to see the giant arm, and he walks in, and they had the giant arm flip him the bird, and then he got stuck that way for a week.
Oh,
with his middle finger up, which I thought was really funny. I love that idea. But I just think it's the coolest effect, just this giant arm. I think it did okay. They did okay with the monster effect. Yeah, I don't love it. There are some things that I liked about it, but it's not definitely. I didn't enjoy it as much as last week.
All right. Okay. So you're not loving it, especially for its gender politics of 1976. Drew, what are you thinking about King Kong?
Okay, so everything I'm about to say, I feel like I have to make an amendment here because I know a lot of people on our social media seem to love this movie. This is my history. This is my history with this film. This is the first movie I remember actively disliking as a child because I loved the original King Kong. I just thought it was beautiful and mystic and dreamlike, and it was one of those movies that my parents, they needed to keep me occupied. They knew that they could throw that on and I would be transfixed. So when it came time for them to, for whatever reason, they're like, okay, let's show them the 76 King Kong. I remember being so disappointed at how bland Skull Island is in this movie. There's hardly any monsters. There's no dinosaurs. And honestly, as an adult, it kind of, that aspect of it kind of holds up, because like I feel like even the way they shoot Skull Island, it looks like they have this beautiful scenery and they shoot it like it's an episode of like Fantasy Island or The Love Boat or something. It looks so hokey and TV like. That being said, I will get into the other stuff I don't like about this movie, but I did go into this viewing with an eye to look out for the stuff that I do like. And I did pick up on this, so this is probably the kindest viewing of this movie I have ever given it. Like, I really like the Jeff Bridges character. I like the sort of social consciousness aspect of it that he adds to there's actually somebody that's an advocate for animals and that's educated about it. I think that added something to the story. The real hero of the special effects in this movie is not the guy you guys were talking about, but is actually Rick Baker, who made a very, very articulated gorilla suit. And he's the one you were seeing in most of the shots. And I love that stuff. I love the practical effects here. It's kind of like seeing what Toho could have done if they had like a mega budget for one of their Godzilla movies. So I love seeing like all the really elaborate miniatures, and I love all the practical effects. But all that being said, I find myself deeply troubled by some of the sort of racial implications here. In fact, I find myself more troubled than with the original Kong, because at least you can kind of look at that within the framework of the time, whereas this, it's 1976, and like, I hate to say it, the way the natives are portrayed is really almost kind of rapey, and I feel like that's wrong. So, like, I don't know, like, I enjoyed this movie more than I've ever watched it, while still just kind of coming away with like mixed feelings on it. So I will withhold any more until we get deeper into it.
Wow, I cannot wait to discuss this. All right, Tony. I think you're coming out more or less on the other side, right? So
yeah. I mean, I understand most of what Drew's talking about, but this was on TV all the time, and my brothers and I watched it almost any time. And certainly if it was on, like at some point we were going to watch it as much as we could. To me, like, they did a lot of things. Yeah, I guess there's not dinosaurs and, as much, it's not as mythic, but Kong charging through, originally when I was younger, Kong charging through and taking Jessica Lange and like, oh man, what's going to happen? Like, and then watching it now with, this is at a time when they've had an energy crisis. So like all of the capitalism that is involved in deciding to take Kong, all the like, hey, we're just, we couldn't get oil, so we're going to get this monkey, all that stuff. I think Bridges' character trying to add some compassion to it and kind of getting roped into being the photographer just because, like, well, you're here, we won't kick you off the boat. All that stuff, all that really works for me. There's a lot of not so great process shots, but I think you're wrong, and I disagree anyway, in that everything is shot like TV as far as that island goes. I mean, there's some fantastic nature stuff being shot. I mean, that location is pretty amazing in a lot of ways. Even if a lot of the process special effects, like the ravine and stuff like that, don't hold up as well. I will say that this time around watching it, even Rain was like, wow, why is she so kind of slutty? And she is really, man, the kind of ditzy blonde thing is much more grating than I remembered. I it's not something I would have noticed as a kid, I guess. And I haven't seen this in a long time, but it's still held up pretty well for me. And there's some pretty insane rampage footage closer to the end. Also, by the way, this had one of the best posters ever.
Oh, I won't argue against that.
Kong straddling the trade towers with like smashing. I think there's like one where it's like a helicopter. And I think there's another one. It's like a blimp looking thing, if I remember correctly. There are like a couple versions, but man, that poster is amazing. In some ways, maybe better than the movie, at least in places. But I personally don't really get the hate that this movie has somehow garnered over the years. I mean, there's much better. It's much better than a lot of monster movies, and certainly better than tons of movies I see all the time on Netflix. So
For sure.
I don't know. I still enjoyed it. I mean, I don't think I'd watch it every week or something, but to me it's not bad. I actually enjoy the movie.
Excellent. Okay. I'm following. It's funny, we had the two negatives and now the two positives. For me, I really enjoy this movie a whole bunch. So there's all of this stuff that is difficult to make sense of today. I mean, certainly, like for instance, Jessica Lange's behavior. The funny thing is, Jessica Lange is not a ditzy blonde, because there's plenty of ditzy blondes in the movie. She is a sex kitten. The whole thing of like constantly like her hair falls in her face, the sort of like dreamy bedroom eyes and all that like giggling and stuff like that, it might grate on our sensibilities now, but she's a sex kitten a la Anne Margaret. Maybe about 10 years out of date for this, but nevertheless, that is what she is doing. It's funny because it works. I mean, she's a very attractive actress, and she can pull this Anne Margaret thing off. But it also makes her a completely unreconstructed, old-fashioned, pretty useless character. There's not a single point when she does something like pick up a rifle or something like that. She has her own mind. I mean, she negotiates with the gorilla. She shouts at him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There is that one useful thing that she does, which is to calm him down when he's about to destroy the ship.
That's true. And she also punches him in the nose. I mean, she does stuff like that. But my point is, she is an old-fashioned sex kitten, and that's the thing. This is, considering how many things are updated in this movie, mostly around people's discontent with things. Like, we're no longer content with millionaire industrialists, and so we're now worried about them. There's that, but nevertheless, it's basically, I love that it is an old-fashioned adventure film. I mean, there's somehow the first half hour of this film, which is nothing but these guys on a boat and them picking up Jessica Lange on a raft, and they're trying to figure out where exactly they're going to go, and it all has this rich color look that's very early 70s, late 60s. It feels like, in many cases, like it could be something out of Fantasy Island or whatever. It's Hawaii that they wind up landing at. This thing is so 1970s in texture, in every sense. Even like the way they decorate things when it's red, white, and blue, and all of that stuff is so familiar as a stamp of the 1970s that I just couldn't take my eyes off of it. I really, really loved it. Now, the native thing, I would say I have much more sympathy for the natives as presented in this film than the natives in the 2005 film. Because in this one, at least they're out to protect Kong, and they're presented as having their own sort of closed society.
Where they roofie a girl to.
Oh yeah, no, they're stealing her.
Like that. I mean, admittedly, that's all stuff that, except for the fact that there's drugs involved. That's all stuff that they've lifted from the original Kong, and you kind of have to.
Yeah, they're going to give her to Kong.
Is it any different than throwing somebody in a volcano? Like, is that? I mean,
that's the whole point.
As far as natives doing things, are you saying that in the course of history,
it's the presentation that differs? It's the presentation that differs. Like, even the way everything about this movie, honestly, is way more sexualized than in the original movie.
It's way more sexualized. That's true. That's totally true.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with her, like floating up in the dinghy, and she's all splayed out like a James Bond girl, and then in her little
by the way,
James
dress, Bond music going all the time.
Every outfit somehow she's the most fashionable castaway or whatever, stowaway, whatever she is, rescuee. I don't know. anyway that there's ever been, because somehow she manages to adapt her outfit along with whatever very skinny guy's outfits that she was able to get, clothes that she was able to get, into these unbelievably adorable, sexy outfits.
They show her sewing that stuff, though.
Yeah, no, I believe it.
There's a point where she's sitting there, like, sewing, like, I need to take this denim thing and turn it into, like, a romper.
It's
so
goofy.
Well, and then there's the yellow shirt. She's wearing a yellow shirt toward the end, and I'm just like, there's no way that yellow shirt was anywhere on that ship.
But that's after Charles Grodin asked for an airlift for new gear, and I think he just asked for some women's clothing. But up until that point, she is making her outfits out of the uniforms of the guys. So
right, and by making the outfits, you mean she's cutting off like entire bottoms of shirts so that she's got like practically underboob, not quite, but yeah.
It doesn't. I'm not defending this because I think, like, again, you watch it and you're like, oh man, that's wow, really? Like, I mean,
I don't know what to tell you. It's a sexist movie. I love it. It fits in with James Bond films of the time. It's a
sexist movie, therefore you love it, or it's a sexist movie, but you love it anyway.
It's a sexist movie, but I love it anyway. Absolutely.
It's a trap, Jason. There's no answer. It's your wife.
I think my patience for that stuff is fully lost to the point where Kong is blowing on her, and for some reason she looks like she's in ecstasy, even though his breath must be rank.
Actually,
that's what I said to Jason. I'm like, there's no way his breath is not horrible.
Yeah, man,
that
Brandon
was
and
so
I were definitely
stupid.
like,
go ahead.
The scene where she's drugged that we were just talking about a minute ago. She's not even like conked out, like she's not like slumped over like she should be. It's like they gave her, roofie's a good word. I mean, it's like they gave her an aphrodisiac, and she's just kind of like, because she's sitting up, but she's kind of like swaying back and forth, and then when she's standing, she's swaying back and forth. And I'm like, what drug is this that they've given her that kind of half knocked her out, but mostly seems to have turned her on or something? I don't know what.
It's true. There is a whole sort of element of softcore perviness to it. That I also think is in keeping with the era. I mean, honestly, have you watched like other disaster films of the time, like Earthquake and stuff like that? There's all this sort of weird sexiness going on, but I think that kind of thing goes over the heads of little kids, and so an entertainment would come, the whole family would go, and like the adults are going, wow, this is actually pretty pervy, with the way that Kong is like poking at her and trying to remove her top.
Well, I mean, she's saved because she won't watch Deep Throat. I mean,
that's right.
Does set the tone.
Yes.
Like by name, not I saw risque movie, or they watch movies I wouldn't watch. She names it explicitly.
That's a good timestamp, by the way, because like everybody was showing it was quite the thing. Lucille Ball was famously having big Hollywood parties where she would show Deep Throat. That thing was a cultural phenomenon, and so the idea that this girl was on a party barge and they were showing Deep Throat, there is nothing more cliched, nothing more like perfectly 1976 than that. And it is hilarious that she survives the the sinking of her yacht because they were going to watch Linda Lovelace and she wasn't. That is very funny. Okay, let's talk about Monsieur Kong compared with 33 and 2005, and if we want to, we can talk about 2017 as well. We have many different Kongs in here, basically, because there's no CG, so everything's more or less practical. There's a bunch of different Kongs. One is the close-up Kong that you see where he's smiling at her and grinning and doing all of this stuff. Those faces are completely mechanical. It's a mask that I guess, and Drew, you know more about this than I do. I think it has Rick Baker's face in it, but
Rick
it's
Baker
a mask.
wore
really
the suit. Rick Baker wore the suit, and it's actually the mechanical Kong that gets all the credit in the publicity and everything is only actually in 15 seconds of this
right,
movie.
but I'm talking about the
Because
facial features when
It's
you
a
know
giant
the
face.
facial
when they
features
show the
is-
face.
the facial features, that is all Rick Baker in a
Really good.
very articulated mask. And I mean, even the scene I was just razzing on, it is actually amazing when you see this gorilla like puff his cheeks out, and you know, like that stuff is all really cool.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know, it's funny, like Rick Baker actually does not think that much of his work on Kong. He thinks it's one of his like, he thinks it's kind of a slapdash job, but I think he's kind of underrating the work he did here, because this is the best
No, it's very strong.
suit monster I have ever, like, the only suit monster I think I would probably hold up to this as far as giant monster movies goes, the Godzilla and Godzilla 1985, which is of a comparable quality. But like, this is some really nice work here. I mean, it's as far as, you know, the suitmation, I guess, is what the kaiju enthusiasts call it, you know, that style of monster making. And I don't know, like that is the... Huh?
I was saying I didn't think it was as good as the one that we just saw last week, but I'll say that the facial expressions are better in the Rick Baker version, because I kept saying he's so expressive. I love his facial expressions, and I certainly didn't think that in this one, the new one. So that part, yeah, I have to say, is really exceptional.
But what I'm saying is the articulation, the different things that the face can do, require them to trade out different masks for him.
Yeah, there's a different face. Like, they have a face that puffs his cheeks out. They have a face that smiles. They have a face for roaring. So like literally, like they would go from mask to mask, and then they have like what they call the hero mask, which is like when you just see him kind of rampaging around.
Yeah.
Which could make like kind of generally move his jaw. Like I spent like, I probably have actually now read up more on this movie than I have the 33 Kong, which I actually
That's amazing.
Better. But I spent several days reading about this movie, and like the behind the scenes stuff is just fascinating. Like Rick Baker basically wore the Kong suit because he says he was the only one crazy enough to do it, because they couldn't get a stuntman to agree to put up with how grueling this was going to be, and switching out the masks and running around all the miniatures. And Rick Baker is already kind of a hero to me from American Werewolf in London. So
absolutely,
so just to hear this, I all the practical effects, like that's kind of what won me over a little bit on this movie. I love practical effects. Anybody who's been listening to this podcast for a while knows that. And it just like seeing this kind of monster movie with this level of special effects is really cool.
I really love seeing this Kong walking around. I mean, some people have not been crazy about it because it is, it's Rick Baker. It's a man in a suit as opposed to an animation. But I mean, it's cool seeing him walking around like the miniature street, the buildings and so forth, or there's some neat cinematography where, and I know it's a composite, but it's so cool, where you're pulled back above the natives. The natives are looking down at the sacrificial stand, where Kong has come and just picked up Jessica Lange, and she's like a little doll in his hand. And with that, like, all those like levels in the image, where you are, where the wall and the natives are looking down on where Kong is, it's really well constructed, that image, and you believe it. You totally believe that you're looking down on this enormous ape that has just wandered out of the woods to pick a woman up in his hand and is now wandering away. And I think maybe it works for me because it's not that realistic per se. I mean, you don't have to worry about like the uncanny valley, because your brain is already switched into its fantasy.
And again, the expressions just really sell it, because, he's the giant, ape, and he's looking at the little woman, but it's because you see him looking at her like, well, how curious. She's different from the others. She's blonde. Like, you just really feel like you can read his thoughts, like he's like, thank you for the little dolly, I mean, he's just kind of walking off with her. And
yes.
I mean, every time he looks at her or he's looking at other people, you know, when he's getting shot at, you feel like he's really in pain or he's really just shocked. And when he's, you know, dealing with her, you know, and then when he is kind of sexually molesting her, then he looks lusty, he looks frightening. You know, I mean, it was really interesting how they were able to achieve that.
Which again is part of why it works. Like, you know, again, why they want Jessica Lange. Oh, look, this person, a blonde, like she would be worth so much more to this god we worship or to this thing that we appease, even if he's not a god, he's something like,
absolutely.
You know, periodically we give women to him. This one really has got to be special. Like,
he's a god to them.
Nothing else like this on the island.
Yeah, I mean, for sure,
he's
a god, and he deserves the most random, the most rare, the most everything.
You know, the thing is about Kong as a character, you know, like you read all these analysis of what Kong means in pop culture, and I was reading one about this, and I talked about this versus, you know, they're 33, where they said, well, you know, in 33, you know, Kong represented the downtrodden American worker, whereas this Kong is the danger of the unchained male libido, which I think is a very 70s way of, like, it's a sort of pop psychology, you know, like, but at the same time, that does, if you're going to analyze this movie, it does kind of hold up the scrutiny because this Kong is such a lech.
So I agree with you, except for that I don't know if I agree with that thesis. So I agree that Kong is a lech. I agree that Kong exhibits power, and so I don't know, you might be invited to put yourself into his mind, to imagine being a giant person who has power over everybody, including beautiful women. I guess, except for that I guess that's true, but I don't know what it means then. I mean, does that mean that he gets killed as a means of reminding us that we're not allowed to just randomly molest people? And that's what I mean, I just feel like going down this path just invites us to overanalyze something that is essentially a titillating sort of fantasy.
Well, I mean, sometimes a giant gorilla is just a giant gorilla. You know, when I was talking about this with Jamie, what we kind of mutually agreed upon is that King Kong is kind of, as a character, and the general story of it can be also a bit of a Rorschach test. Like, you can bring to it, you know, what, because she you know, started telling that she feels like that King Kong's could be seen as a metaphor for colonialism and like slavery and things like that, which is, you know, I know she's not the only one that has brought that to the material, but like
Absolutely.
I do think that there maybe the reason why we're now on the upkeep, you know, revision of this. I mean, if we're counting all the imitators, is because there is stuff there.
Well, what do you make of the fact, for instance, that I'm not the first person to observe this, but that sort of sexual element, or at least the titillating element, that Kong is thought of as the bride, and everybody makes a big deal about the bridegroom kind of stuff. You know, that we're intended to think about or not think about the sexual aspect of Kong's lust for Fay Wray and then for Jessica Lange. Where the hell is that in the 2005? Because in 2005, I don't remember picking up any of this sort of weird lasciviousness.
I mean, I think we should save some of that for the discussion, but I think our decades of sympathy for Kong really seeped into the latest two versions. Like, because we're tired of seeing Kong, you know, fall, so to speak. So we've made him more like I mean, up until the point where in the new movie he's essentially a superhero. Like we people, you know, like there are more Godzilla movies by far. You know, I think there's something like only like 8. I'm probably getting the number wrong, but 8 official King Kong movies. But there's no real reason to think that King Kong is no less beloved than Godzilla, because I think people do love him, and that's why I think with each version, and you certainly see that with this one, each subsequent version, he gets more and more heroic in a way. And I mean, there's no real accident that, like, they have Jeff Bridges, this sort of this death howl of hippie culture, like screaming the joy as Kong swats military helicopters out of the air. I think that's because that's that's something a lot of people probably wanted to see. So it helps
Yeah.
the heroization of Kong in this movie.
Well, especially because they were being unfair. There's a general sense that later on, when Kong is facing the military, Jack believes that it's not fair for them to be attacking him the way they are, and they
Not
get
just
what's
unfair,
coming
but
to them.
they broke a promise. He said, "I'll tell you where he's going to be if you promise you won't hurt him."
Right.
And they're like, "Okay, yeah, fingers crossed. We have our fingers crossed."
Sure,
I
but
mean, so
Kong is
that was
not
part
privy
of
to
it
that
too.
promise. I mean,
No, but my point is that you feel like Jack has also his own personal what's the word I'm looking for? That he's been wronged personally,
Yeah.
and so he also is kind of going, that's what you get. We had made a promise, and you not only are you hurting him, but you had promised you wouldn't. So you have it.
Well, now, okay. Now, are you ready for my bullshit symbolism thoughts? I actually think that strongly represents America's feelings about the Vietnam War. Where we had feelings about the way the military was supposed to behave, but then when we learn that in many cases they didn't behave, and maybe this was just because for the first time we were paying attention, but when we learned that in many cases they didn't behave the way we expected, we turned on them in a sense. We started not being as sympathetic to their pain and their losses, and so that all happens in 30 seconds for Jack, because Jack is a Navy man. He doesn't come from nowhere, but he feels like these service members have betrayed the promises that the Americans have made. Now, I recognize that every movie in the 70s, I say, is representative of our feelings about the Vietnam War, but nevertheless, I think that's there. Go ahead.
What's interesting in comparison to the new one, which is a faux, like a fake 70s Kong, is that they are a lot more sympathetic. With the exception of the Samuel L. Jackson character, they are a lot more sympathetic to the military than this one is.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point. But you couldn't have been super sympathetic to the military. Well, 76 is complicated, but one thing that definitely happened is you're talking about the era of the Deer Hunter and all these like coming home kind of movies. What's the one that Metallica used for their video?
Johnny Gun, isn't it?
Yeah, Johnny Got His Gun. And it wasn't until Stripes came out in the early 80s that there was this sincere effort to rehabilitate the military in the eyes of the American public. For a while, the military just sort of lay low in the public. I mean, you still needed an army, even if we laid off a lot of guys. You still needed the Navy, but the pop culture was just not paying attention. And then slowly but surely, people like Bill Murray joins the army in Stripes, and you started to rehabilitate the military in the eyes of the public. But this is 2017. We've forgotten all about that stuff. We're ready for further punishment at this point. So yes, you can have kind of an unreconstructed love for the United States Army in Kong Skull Island, and nobody bats an eye. That's really interesting, Drew. I'm glad you brought that up.
Before we get off the subject of Kong, I would like to touch on why there are no dinosaurs in this movie, which I can not get one agreement. There's a lot of different versions of the idea that they thought that people wouldn't necessarily buy it in the 1970s, which I think is horseshit. I don't actually buy into that. But there was the one story. I won't bore you with all the different versions. But
no, please give us your research. You've been doing research for a reason. Give it to us.
Well, there was people who thought that they were doing Kong with the robotic Kong, so that they had to build the robotic Kong, that they were going to have to build all these robotic dinosaurs. Then that brought into a whole problematic thing. There was another version of
what
the
is the
story
robotic Kong? Can you I mean, I have some idea of that, but is there some perception out there that there's a robot Kong through this movie?
There is a robotic Kong in the movie. He's only in about 15
Is he the one that
seconds.
breaks out of the cage, or when do they use the robotic?
If you blink and you miss, they built a 3-story high robotic Kong, and you blink and you miss something. The only time you can actually get a good look at him is in the scene where he breaks out of the cage, which most of that is still Rick Baker in the suit, and then there is a shot of him kind of moving through the crowd, and it's very stiff looking, and it's a very much one of these things is not like the other. And the robotic Kong, near as I can tell, is the real reason why there are no dinosaurs in this movie, because they spent a shit ton of money on a robotic Kong that barely was usable because it was so stiff. And that was the most agreed upon reason, is that there was actually drafts of this that had dinosaurs in it. And they omitted it all the way down to just the giant snake, because that was the only thing they actually still had money to build after blowing so much money.
The giant snake is such a bad effect that is actually one of that, and the like the sexism and the racism and maybe one or two other things are the reason I can't really love this movie. What?
But the gigantic snake doesn't cut it, and I also feel like by omitting all of the other creature battles, you lose a big motivator for I guess Dwan in this movie, Jessica Lange, but Fay Wray in the original, for them to cozy up to Kong, because Kong is, even though he's abducted her, he's also protecting her from all these other crazy things on this island.
Well, not just her, but all the natives. Like when Jeff Bridges says, you really have screwed these people up by taking away their god, because now they don't have anything to worship and they're going to become a bunch of alcoholics. I'm like, that's a stupid reason. That's like saying, well, now, gosh, if you get rid of cancer, then, people are going to live forever and they'll become alcoholics. Like, what the hell? They might actually find great purpose not having a horrible, destructive monster on their island. But when it was giant monsters that he's fighting, then hell yeah, we need him if he's going to. He's the only thing between them and.
I actually did like that line a bit, but I agree with you in principle. Maybe it was just Bridges' delivery, but I feel like one of the things that all the other versions of this story really do is like, the moment they get to that, on the other side of that wall, the shit really hits the fan. Like everything on this island wants to just eat you. And I think that the new version did a great job of that. The Peter Jackson version does a great job of that, and certainly the original does. And I feel like that's something that's lost here. And maybe I'm just being too much of a purist. I don't know.
No. I think it's a valid
point. You love this movie. I really want to. Tony, Jason, you both love this movie. Am I being anal here?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like I said before, the snake isn't super great. I never thought that. Even as a kid, of course I would prefer way more dinosaurs, pterodactyl, you name it. Throw that at Kong, right? Like, you can never have enough monster. But for some reason, it never bothered me that it was just a snake, because it's in general, this movie is less about Kong protecting everybody and more about this terrible oil company that wants to, when they can't get oil, they trap Kong. They take him to the States to a place he was never supposed to be, and he's super destructive when he gets out. There's sympathy.
Let's talk about that segment.
When I was younger, I didn't get the pervy part. Like, oh, he's interested in her. Like, now it's super obvious. Like, also, I think, about the natives, of course, there's no, like, racism and all of that. There's never a point where we should be like, oh, whatever. But I think in general, even the Bridges line that you're talking about, at the time, it's not what anthropology is truly about, but what pop culture thinks of anthropology. Like, these savages, whenever they don't have these things, they do this or whatever. And I think it falls firmly in that kind of, not actually National Geographic, but the pseudo National Geographic you might see on something like In Search Of.
Yes.
Or any number of kind of tabloidy things where, like, look at these natives. Have you heard of pygmies? Like, this stuff that, of course, when you read actual National Geographic or anything about real anthropology is patently false. And yet,
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's patently false, Tony, because there's plenty of every single type of person, including us, who do horrible things and sacrifice people and have weird rituals. I mean, heck, there's like people now that have bizarre, I'm not going to pick on any specific cults, but, there's these cults now that have these bizarre practices with women and virgins and young brides and whatever. So it's not that it's patently false. It's that it's not fair to portray them that way.
I mean,
in general, what they're portraying is a pop culture of the time version of what.
Yeah, it's a Ripley's Believe It or Not version of the world.
In this land, they tie women. It becomes this what you perceive. Or if you've seen documentaries, there's black and white documentaries where they, white hunters go into the bush and look at these weird natives. They do these things. And it's much more
we do that.
that.
That's just what movies do. We always look, in our entertainment, we're always going to look at everybody else who is foreign and different from us with suspicion and horror and think that they're all, that's why we have now all Middle Easterners are terrorists in the movies. And, before it was all Latinos or drug lords. I mean, it's we just have to villainize the other because it makes us feel better about our own culture.
But at the same time, the whole thing with King Kong is there's this double-edged sword of that, because King Kong does sort of represent the other, but then we're sort of smacked up against the side of the head for our colonialism and our racism.
Yes.
By way of a big gorilla kicking our ass. So
right.
I to this end, I will say this. I almost, and again, I know we're going to talk about this movie, so I don't want to waste too much time talking about it. But I almost prefer the way Peter Jackson did it, where he was screw it, I'm not interested in doing anything realistic. I'm just going to do Cannibal Holocaust. That's at least he turned it into a horror movie, and I don't think he was particularly trying to show anything realistic.
No, it's complete fantasy. I was really, but you know what, we will talk about that movie. That didn't work for me, but what are you gonna do? I will say, we were talking the other day on the Facebook page, and everything that we've been talking about lately with these in this film, with these questions of the way, that whole Ripley's Believe It or Not way of viewing any world that's not the continental United States, and any life that's not a fairly recognizable family ties style suburban life, as exotic and weird and mysterious. We now tend to call those problematic. And I talk to really sensitive people sometimes who are like, "Oh, I started to watch that movie, but they used the G slur, by which they mean," and I apologize if people are offended by this word, they mean gypsy. But they'll say they were using that word, and I'm just not able to listen to people, being insensitive anymore. And I'm thinking, well, you're cutting yourself off from a lot of movies if you're going to stop, because to me it's worth looking and seeing where the culture was in 1976, instead of going, I'm only going to watch films that actually underline the way I feel.
Well, how do you feel about Charles Grodin character using the term wog, which is a terrible slur?
It is a slur. No, absolutely. The movie is full of insensitivities, for sure.
Well, here's the thing. This is what I think about that. I think that if you are making a point of saying, I am going to boycott films that are made that use language like this, that is an effective way to affect cultural change. That's what, social change. That is how these changes have been made to this point. And that's why we don't have so much of this now of what's showing up in the 70s, but we still have a whole, bunch of stuff that we want to get rid of now. However, if you're going to close your eyes and close your ears off to our history, our past, and say, we're going to ban books that talked about slavery. We're going to not watch, movies that have slaves, or we're not going to have, any film that shows the rape of women or whatever. Then you're really in danger of repeating your history, because we have to be aware of where we came from, so that we don't repeat it, and so that we're able to affect the social change that we want to affect. But I do think that saying nowadays I will not go see a film that uses that word because I think it's an offensive word is a great thing to do, as long as you're saying it out loud.
What if the movie is from 1976, is my point.
Right.
In other words,
then it's kind of, fine, don't watch it if it bothers you, that's fine. but it's not going to serve us to hide all these things that were offensive. It's better to put them out in the open, let them see the sunlight, and then talk about it, have the dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Now, listen, I'm aware, by the way, that I'm speaking from a position of privilege, because none of the insensitivities of these movies of the 70s are going to offend me,
Right.
because I'm a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male. But having said all that, I really do want to see what the culture was like, I'm not crazy about. I'm not any more than I'm crazy about people saying I'm not going to watch a movie because it's in black and white, and I can't read black and white. It doesn't work for my eyes. And I'm thinking, well, you should work on that and watch a couple black and white movies. Here, let me recommend some to you.
I won't
Yeah,
watch
it
anything
just,
that I have to read captions.
oh yeah, oh that drives me crazy. Like, okay, well, you should, and here, let me recommend some French films for you. That just, that
Or should have
intellectual
subtitles. Okay.
incuriosity, especially from people who consider themselves intellectuals, is deeply troubling to me. But there we go.
Wait for Dale. So one thing that did strike me as well that I had clearly forgotten when I watched this again is how actually bloody and crazy the carnage is
Yeah.
once Kong gets going. I mean, he picks up a woman who he thinks is Jessica Lange, and he looks at her and is like, "You're not her. Away with you!" Like he
and he throws. Yeah, he throws the train car.
Well, that's like straight up lift from God. Like that's an homage to Godzilla. I wouldn't say lift. It's like, hey, look, this monster's also destructive. But when he gets shot by the helicopters, that's still effective to me. It is
Yes.
bloody and cruel. It
it's
again
very
goes
bloody.
back to when you see.
When he splits the snake head open, that's super bloody.
But
yeah.
like it goes back to if you watched a nature show and for some reason you saw an animal bitten or marred by another animal or perhaps a poacher or something like that. Like it really looked like all of that stuff at the time because we also had tons more nature shows and you had Wild America, National Geographic, and even Disney made a ton of nature shows. Some of them more fake than others now that we can read and hear about those. But there was all that going on and I was like, oh man, no wonder when Kong is being shot, they really decided to lay it on. And that was really effective as a kid. Like it was shocking and disturbing.
It's still shocking. I credit where credit's due. Like the final battle is incredibly grisly, and it's upsetting. I mean, it's meant to be. But I think a lot of people's what?
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say a lot of people's mileage may vary on that. I know. Some people don't. I know a lot of people don't like to watch any version of King Kong because they know he's going to fall off the skyscraper at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
right. Well, and this one is interesting because it really pushes I think it really plays with our ability to have compassion for a bad guy. Like we used to watch a soap opera, Days of Our Lives, and it's fascinating to me how you'll take a character who is the most horrible character, the rapist character, the awful, villain, and then all you have to do is have him be nice for a few months and then he's rehabilitated and he's fine and we have compassion for him and we want him to get the girl that he raped. We want him to get whatever he can because now he's being nice. That
plot happens over and over again. By the way,
yeah,
that's not a one-time thing.
It happens all the time, and I think it happens in real life too. I mean, I think as soon as somebody who was a villain starts to be nice to, like in our lives, even starts to be nice to us, we go, "Oh, he's changed," or "She's different now." And I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. But anyway, so here. I find it interesting that I keep thinking about the fact that every year or I don't even know if it's every month or every week, who knows how often, they present these sacrifices to Kong, these people on this island. And I don't know what he does with these women. Like, does he eat them? Does he throw them off the cliff? Does he rape them? And that's for sure kill them. I mean, what is he doing to these women every time he gets one?
I hate to say it, I imagine he eats them.
So he's awful. He's an awful monster. And yet here we are at the end going, "Aw, they shouldn't kill him."
In fairness, he is an animal. Like it's not like he is a natural part of that island. Like he isn't, this isn't like Dracula, or the Wolfman in that same respect. It's like Kong is an animal. You know,
It'd
he's
be
part
like
of an
freeing a
ecosystem.
lion from the Colosseum,
But,
and then
but
just
we are animals too, and our thing is our spot place in the food chain is that we have developed tools in order to kill our predators. So he's killing our people, he's killing our kind. So we have to kill him too because he's going to kill our kind. So that's what I'm saying is it makes perfect sense in the whole food chain scenario that they kill him, and he needed to die because honestly, whether he's in New York or on the island,
I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all. I think it's first of all, it's the oil companies in this movie. We'll leave it to this movie alone. In this movie, it's the oil company for taking him off of his habitat. But he's killing people in the habitat too. He's killing human beings. He wouldn't be doing that on his own. He doesn't have a framework of right or wrong. He's a gorilla. That's like getting I have no sympathy. I have no sympathy. Like, okay, there was a guy in a news story about a guy in East Texas who saw a sign near a restaurant that said danger, alligators in creek. So he dived right into the creek and he got eaten. And then they shot the alligator. And I think that's messed up because it's not the alligator's fault for being an alligator. It's that stupid human's fault.
But that's not the scenario here. That is not the scenario here.
That is absolutely the scenario.
No. They are giving him sacrifice. Drew, they're giving him sacrifices to keep him from killing all of them.
Humans.
Okay.
They have decided.
He would kill them all if they didn't sacrifice one.
I don't. They may have decided that. I don't know.
I think he would. I think he'd chill out on a cliff and eat giant snakes.
That's why they have the giant wall to keep him out originally.
Well, this is why it's a tragedy.
I'm with Drew. Like, these people have decided, much like other societies that have been cataloged, that the only way to keep Kong from busting down the gate is to send him a virgin maybe once a full moon, maybe less, or maybe it's however often they do that. They've decided this is the way to appease Kong. I mean, what did they do before? There's obvious a lot of them, and he leaves them alone for the most part. What did they do before they decided? Did he try to eat them all? We don't know yet. And I
love the scene where he's in the tanker, 100%. By the way, and they start dumping the bananas, and he's like, "No, I don't want any stupid bananas."
Yes.
He's annoyed.
But I mean, this is a society that's decided that the only way to appease Kong is women. They could just as easily, they could send a warrior out there to go fight Kong, and like, it's not like Kong's like, women, yeah.
But
I mean,
an extension
of Kong is pervy, so maybe that's true. Like,
but that's
Kong. But this is a
it's
society
in keeping with the popular idea of sacrificing virgins to volcanoes and all that stuff. In other words, and it's slightly more rational than the volcano.
I think they got it wrong if you're trying to sacrifice a virgin.
I'm not saying that it's not right. I'm not saying that is right. I'm saying that is the people that came to that conclusion. Everything that happens in this movie that is negative is the result of humanity, because humanity sucks. Animals don't have a concept of right and wrong. So I guess I'm the Jeff Bridges character here.
You're the PETA rep.
But even Jeff Bridges would prefer that he would first prefer that they capture Kong and bring him back, because it was stupid to bring him to New York in the first place. But I think even Jeff Bridges would say if things got bad enough that you would probably in the end have to euthanize this animal, because he can't go on rampaging and destroying Manhattan for weeks.
That is a good word for it, because honestly, if you have a dog and your dog suddenly becomes, I'm not even going to say rabid, because it's not that he's ill, but suddenly he just becomes violent and he kills kids or whatever, you put it down, even if you thought it was a wonderful dog.
We had dogs that killed my pet goat and they got into a pack of wild dogs. These are dogs that, were our pets. Killed one goat, almost killed another. At that point, we made a decision. Because that's what they're going to do. We couldn't have those animals. It sucks. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But in that case. But again, that's animals. They don't have, it was okay to them. And, we had to decide.
Well, we are too. We are animals
circle of
too.
Life, they would have just done that. We wouldn't have intervened at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's just that we're just part of the. We like to pretend that we're not, but we're just part of the whole system ourselves. We kill. The only difference being that we kill our own people, our own kind, more than other animals do. But we're just, everybody's just killing everybody else, to try to survive and get ahead.
Well, and
I think that. Well, like, this is as good of an excuse as any to talk about this oil company. Because,
yes, talk about the oil company and the Rock'em Sock'em 1976 style thing that they put up, the big exposition that in New York Harbor, because
the Iron Man Expo.
this blows my mind. It is so amazing. So
well,
yes,
it is important to note that the same guy that wrote this script also wrote a lot of the scripts for the Adam West Batman show.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Talk to us about the real bad guys, which is just a corporation called Petrox.
I'm fascinated because I watched the original Kong again in gearing up to watch this one. So Charles Grodin is effectively playing the Carl Denham character, only he's no longer a filmmaker. He's an oil tycoon, which is of course already putting it into the energy crisis of the day. But he is so much less like the original Kong. Like there's some hubris to Carl Denham, but this movie just really does not like this venture capitalist character at all. He is maybe superficially charming, but I don't think. I mean, did anybody else like this character on any level other than just
at best he's comic relief. He's intended to be comic relief, basically. Yeah.
He's so much less sympathetic, though. I know we even talked about him doing he drops a racial slur earlier, but now that we're actually talking about it, I kind of feel like that was thrown out there, that the show that he sort of has this leftover colonialist attitude. And as Tony keeps referring to, so they're going to Skull Island because they think there's oil on there. And the thing that Tony keeps referring to is that the moment they find that the oil there is no good, he's kind of like, well, we'll just take this gorilla, we'll take this giant gorilla because at least we can turn it into a commercial. They even say oh, well, Exxon just has a paper tiger. Imagine what we can do with a giant gorilla. And
it's exactly, but man, you can picture people do it today, if given the chance, totally would do that.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about the fact that when they trap him to bring him home, they were able to trap him because he is going to tear down that wall because they have taken his doll away. They've taken the doll back. So he very well might have killed them all if they hadn't captured him. Now, they didn't necessarily have to take him to New York, but I don't know that he was going to be okay with not eating the Duan. I hate that name, by the way. Duan, that's the dumbest name.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think he needed her. I mean, I think he was like, I have to have her back, and if I can't have her, then you're all dying. You're all going to die. I do believe that was a risk.
That's because he's been conditioned to do that, like a lab rat. And,
possible.
I feel like this oil company is the real villains. If they had just left well enough alone, it's an imperfect
look how
system,
stupid they are, Drew. When they do their exposition, not only do they put Kong into a big trap, into a big cage, but they've got her on an identical replica of the sacrificial steps that she was on the island. By the way, fuck you if you have trauma for her, because they're like, we're going to recreate this whole thing, only everything's made of Christmas tinsel, so it's all gleam.
Yeah, but she agreed to that. I mean, if she had trauma about it, then she needed to not.
Yeah, so she doesn't actually have
trauma about it. I don't think she has trauma about it because I don't think she's afraid of him. I think she's like, this is cool.
That's true.
I don't think she's capable of trauma about a lot of things, given her character. The
deepest thought that I think this woman has for the entire movie is that she has the realization that if he puts her down, they're going to shoot him.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest moment of her rubbing two brain cells. Well, I guess in what Julie already mentioned, her realizing that he's going to wreck the boat if she doesn't calm him down.
And she says that if she goes ahead and does all this stuff, she will be a star. She recognizes that as well.
No, that's what I'm saying. As soon as he's like, hey, by the way, Goddess Ape, if you want to be a star, stick with me. She's like, oh, okay. Let's do that now.
You know, though, like putting her in this light, you know, like even as she's kind of, you know, everybody in this movie has an angle. Even like, you know, like we're talking about what Kong wants, we're talking about what the oil company wants, you know, like what Dwan wants. Like the only person I think that has any pure morality in this is the Jeff Bridges character.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Plus he has really good
Yeah.
70s hair.
Oh man,
He is a dead. I have a friend Hunter who is a dead ringer for 1976 Jeff Bridges. I shit you not.
That's awesome.
I wanted him to trim that beard though, because his facial hair is not as powerful as his chin hair, and so he has this kind of serial killer look around his cheeks, and then this full like neck and chin beard, and I was just like, someone needs to take a razor at that thing.
Like,
You know.
I like Jason's like critique. I like this middle of a monster movie. Jason pauses to critique Jeff Bridges' 70s facial hair. I don't know why. But that is
I like to imagine that
like,
this is the origin story of the dude from the Big
The
Lebowski.
dude, yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Like he was like, man, that shit with Kong was some messed up stuff. He moved out to L.A., started drinking, started bowling.
This
Yeah.
aggression will not stand.
It's also an interesting backstory for a character that he plays called the Giver in this film that I just saw recently, where it's like this weird dystopia where everybody in the community has been brainwashed and given like medication or whatever, so that they've forgotten everything and they can't even see color. They've forgotten everything of how humanity was, and everything is all peaceful and beautiful. And people talk about their feelings, but they don't have strong feelings, and they don't have passion or like family that's actually family. They have roles that they've been chosen to play, and his role is to be the keeper of the history of people. And it's like basically kind of an an angry version of the dude. So I'm just kind of like, and I mean, I guess like we're saying, an evolution of this character, because he's the only one who remembers, and he's like, this is wrong. We should all remember, because there's so many things that we're missing out on, and there's so many things that are important for us to know that happened, and it was really interesting.
Jason, can we get an article where we get a critique of Jeff Bridges' facial hair throughout the ages?
Yes.
That I want to see you pin. After loving critique of his, this hair is stronger. I now want this. So, please soon pin this column.
Yeah, watch this space, because we'll get the true grit Jeff Bridges in there, and
exactly.
Yes.
See, this is so full of win. What could go wrong?
I also want to mention in this exposition that they set up, because this featured prominently in the baseball cards. I should say bubblegum cards. The bubblegum card set, and I mentioned this on the Facebook page, the bubblegum card set for King Kong was one of the finest bubblegum card sets ever. It had all these great images of like the best sets. All the money was on the baseball cards, because the giant sets and Kong in his cage, and Kong has a crown, and I know it looks dumb, and I know it's a mockery, and you're supposed to pity Kong because they put him in a cage and put a crown on his head like Jesus. But for me as a 5-year-old, I was profoundly moved to see King Kong with a crown, because he's king. It made total sense, and I loved it, and so all this stuff, it's so cheesy, but it's aware of its own cheesiness. It's showing, look how tasteless giant corporations that sponsor, halftime shows are.
You've seen none of this is cheesy in a way that wouldn't happen.
Right.
Like, you've seen any show remotely like this, especially during the 70s.
Oh my God. Yes.
I would say that's about as accurate.
The fact that it's got a giant gorilla, this is a reasonably realistic take on.
Yes.
So I
Tony's
totally
absolutely
agree.
right.
If you found a giant gorilla and you want to put on this show, King Kong would have a crown. It does, like, as cheesy as it is, that's exactly what would happen. Like, all of this is believable in the context of the era.
Yeah. He's got he's in this cage, and I love Charles Grodin wearing his great white hunter outfit. Boy, there's another racially insensitive phrase that comes from this era. But he's wearing that outfit, and he's talking about, don't worry, folks, that cage that is a what is it? That is a escape-proof cage, and that steel is certified by, and he's like saying whoever is certified.
The American Steelworkers Union. Right.
So, I mean, that's like broad satire. That's like RoboCop level satire.
Right.
Where all of a sudden, Kong is just tearing the cage apart, and they're talking about whatever regulations it went through.
His leg is still chained, even though
yes.
It's like
he pulls the leg free. And then he just starts stomping on people. That's
like Kong straight up stomps on him, and like this character.
Yeah.
And the other versions of this actually always lives.
Not in this last movie. Not in the last movie, because it's the Samuel L. Jackson character that he smushes on purpose.
Well, no, but I'm saying like the new Kong is a departure from this particular storyline. Like this movie has like characters that sync up with characters from the original. So like they change his name, but this is essentially Carl Denham, which is the same character that will be played by Jack Black in the Peter Jackson version. And like I will say, if there's one thing I like about this movie is how this character does get his karmically, because I mean that might not happen in real life. I mean, let's face it.
Like, if you saw this movie in the theaters in 1975, Drew, you would not have seen it, because that stomp was cut theatrically and was not seen by audiences until it was broadcast on television, for what it's worth.
And man, was it broadcast on television a lot. I will have to. Like, whoever, it's one of those, that and like, there are a few movies that if there was a Friday night that was missing something.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
NBC bought the rights to show it over and over and over again, basically. Then they'd show it on 2 parts, so it would take 2 nights to watch it.
Absolutely. An event.
Because this 2-hour movie.
Event.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, then of course there was
television event. Yes. Yeah.
Then of course there was the sequel.
Oh man,
I have not seen that.
Which I watched again, and I have to say, it's a terrible movie. It's terrible, but didn't hate it watching it this time around, because
Drew, that's the one where he gets a heart, right? Like
he gets an heart, and there's all these gigantic surgical equipment.
So
and Linda Hamilton is Kong's doctor.
So
and he hooked up with a lady Kong.
Oh man! So my cousins had cable, and they recorded this on VHS, and my younger brother watched this movie so many times, and I have seen it way more times than I should ever see it.
Are you serious?
Are we covering this movie? Because I don't want to give it, but man,
maybe we should.
I don't know if it's worth doing a whole episode on. Maybe as a bonus episode, but like it's a funny movie. It's an unintentionally funny movie.
Funny? Really? Not
just
a funny movie.
I'll tell you what. We're gonna do King Kong Escapes, which is the Japanese silly Kong film, and maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll find some time.
I kind of wished we would do that one, just because everybody should see this travesty.
Well, plus it's got Linda Hamilton, so there's that. She's got
King Kong Lives.
Linda Hamilton is Kong's heart surgeon.
Street cred.
Well, I mean,
the only Kong's heart surgeon.
Let that sink in. Linda Hamilton, Kong's heart surgeon. Which, by the way,
he didn't die. He didn't die when he fell off the World Trade Center. He went into a coma.
They used that heartbeat part, which is supposed to be sympathy, as the thesis, like the segue. I mean, into see, he wasn't dead. Look, the heart came back. Remember the heartbeat sound from 76 Kong? Ha! Look, but it came back, everybody. He just needed a new heart. A Jarvik heart, which, was the thing, because at the time, that was big deal. We had artificial heart transplant. Whoa. But man, that movie, oof. That's not a good movie.
It's not, but it is. I did enjoy watching it. I'm not gonna lie. Like I
don't like this movie
we'll think about
for
that.
many reasons.
Because that is just a goofy B movie, and this movie has like more built into it. Like there's more.
It might be
more
fun
room
to
for
discuss that.
disappointment.
Considering this is the show that actually discussed Embrace of the Vampire, there might be
I'm not
room.
gonna make Tony sit through. See, that's the difference between you and me, Jason. I'm not gonna make Tony sit through a movie he didn't like if he didn't want to. I'm not cool like that. I'm not cool like Charles Grodin.
Drew, it's funny you say that, given how many really craptastic movies that you guys have made me sit through.
So this would be the time I would be like, "Hey, I've seen this movie, Jason. You need to see this movie."
It's like when you have like rotten milk and you're like, "Oh, smell it, it's rotten, smell it."
Oh yes.
Well, I tell you what, let's talk about this. We can even take it to the audience as to which Kong B movie should we watch? King Kong Escapes, which features a giant robot Kong and lots of like ladders that people ride elevators up and down Kong, and then like elevators and stuff, or King Kong Lives, which has Linda Hamilton doing giant heart surgery.
I'm gonna go old school and say if we're gonna do a bonus episode, I want Son of Kong, but that's just me.
You're in your 40s, man. You're.
That's actually a fun movie.
1933, son.
33? Is it 1933?
That came out. That was rushed into production because the King Kong was such a big hit.
That's crazy. Within the same year? That's crazy.
Yeah,
wow.
I know.
They probably
how did everybody feel seeing the World Trade Center in this? That's going to change the tone.
Loved the World Trade Center.
What's interesting about that is that when they did it, apparently all the people who worked at the Empire State Building protested because they wanted it to be. But now it's kind of neat to have that, it's just neat. I don't know. It's especially because it's such an important part of the film. It didn't just happen to be what he climbed. It's like reminiscent of his home, and so it's just kind of a neat touch, I think.
I like seeing the World Trade Center in old movies. It really like it featured prominently in 3 Days of the Condor, which is another movie produced by Dino De Laurentiis. He likes these buildings, they're cool buildings. Yeah. They look great. I mean, the fact that they're no longer with us doesn't mean we can't go, wow, those are some cool looking buildings. But what are you thinking, Drew? You asked the question. What does it bring to mind?
I enjoyed seeing it, especially since I watched the Wiz a few months back, and that features into that as well. But I wasn't sure how people feel about that. We talked a lot about cultural sensitivities, and I know that that's something that some people don't necessarily, an emotion people don't necessarily want brought up, but I enjoyed it personally.
I thought post 9/11 Kong was one of the touchstones of wow, that is a thing now. That's a huge pop culture touchstone that is forever slightly marred by all this tragedy. I mean, I think watching the film is something you're going to think about. Seeing the poster is another thing. Like I saw that poster not too long after the events and was struck thinking about it and be like, wow, that's just a thing that doesn't exist. It's marred in tragedy now, and will forever be something that's now rooted in a totally different tone than it was ever originated, originally intended. Sorry. It's strange and brings up a lot of stuff.
I think it'd be different if it had been. I think it'd be different if they had been treated disrespectfully. Like if it's a film where they're like, those ugly pieces of whatever, then you'd kind of be like, that's just hurtful. But in this, they're treated as being this beautiful thing, just really special.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think, and that's it. It brings, in some ways, it is more emotional in the way that.
What's your favorite presentation of the World Trade Center in the movies? Is it this one, which I think is super powerful? Is it you mentioned, what was the one you mentioned, Drew?
The Wiz.
The Wiz. Escape from New York features them prominently because he uses the Trade Center as something high enough that he can launch his glider off of.
I think this.
is
I
the
think
idea.
actually this and Escape from New York kind of back and forth for me.
It's a bit of a random thing to say, but I think the Spider-Man ad for the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man that they stopped running after 9/11, like that was a really amazing. It's not actually part of the movie, but that was a really amazing interpretation of that character and how iconic the towers were of New York. And of course, Spider-Man is also iconic of New York, and King Kong is as well. We associate King Kong with New York.
Yeah.
Mine is actually not fictional. Mine is actually the wire work. What's this French guy's name who did who walked on the wire?
You're never going to get me to just remember that guy's name, but it was The Walk was the movie.
Well, that movie is the new movie with Edward Norton, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't Edward Norton.
Okay.
It was the
Oh yeah, you're right. It was
it was the guy from 30 Rock.
He's got three names.
The guy who played so-called Robin in Dark Knight Rising.
Right.
This is the most embarrassing. Yes.
Jason Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah,
anyway,
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I'm not talking about even just.
Yeah, I'm
actually
drawing a blank.
That's actually computer.
Wrong.
That's actually computer. I mean, like it is fictionalized because they had to create the towers for that. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, that's his name. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And but I'm talking about the actual black and white, short films from the actual guy doing it. Back in the day. I'm going to look up his name so I can tell you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought that was...
to Mr. Gordon-Levitt for...
Yes, and it's Philippe Petit. Philippe Petit is his name.
Right.
And
Philippe Petit, and he did the little film, and I don't know what if it had a name or if it was just... But yeah, his whole thing of doing the walk, I think is just the neatest. It's so crazy and incredible that he did
cool,
that.
If I recall. It was called Man on Wire, and I'm looking that up. But anyway, yes, and that was a wonderful presentation. Some other really cool things going on in this film. I love when the streets kind of empty out because Kong is walking around and he walks past the church and the giant shadow crosses, and there's like hansom cabs that are just running down the street empty because the drivers are gone, so the horses are running wild. All that's cool. I love seeing New York, on the verge of societal collapse, like in movies like this.
So by the way, just as a separate side, I'm with Drew on Son of Kong because I did forget. I was trying to remember which year, but it was only a couple years ago that. I guess 3 years now. But Numathon 16, they showed Son of Kong in 35 millimeter. And
no kidding.
A blast. So that was super cool. And it was the first time I realized how they rushed it out. Like we have X amount of time to get this out. But yeah, man. Son of Kong in 35 millimeter. If you ever get a chance, you should really see that. That's definitely
all right. That sounds fabulous
because it's fun, man. And I think it's definitely I would say one of the more in the grand scheme of things, one of the most you really like Son of Kong. They know why you're there, and you're the most sympathetic, I think, perhaps of any of these movies with Son of Kong.
That's really interesting. I may even have seen this at some point in time, or maybe just read about it in monster magazines and stuff like that. There's one more thing that I'll point out, and that's that this is not a major issue, but among the people on the crew of the ship that they're on, I thought when I first looked at the captain, I thought it was Carl Reiner, but it's actually a guy named John Randolph, who was one of the actors who was blacklisted back during the McCarthy days, and then was, like a lot of guys, was let back into Hollywood at the end of that. It took until the 1960s, and he came back in John Frankenheimer's Seconds, and so he was still around when this movie was made in 1976. John Randolph, pretty cool, neat guy. So I had one more thing that I wanted to mention, and this is my thesis, and I'm saying this because I like this movie a great deal, and so it'd be less important, Drew, to you at this moment because you don't like this movie. Tony does. Um, there's this thing. I think this movie suffers a lot because people remember it as being Dino De Laurentiis's film, and for some reason, De Laurentiis has earned this reputation as not a good producer, which is so weird to me because there are so many movies that he made that are great films. I mean, I just simply reject, because I'm looking right now at a list. This is not off the top of my head, but I'm looking. He made Serpico, Death Wish, 3 Days of the Condor, which is one of my all-time favorite films, The Shootist, Conan the Barbarian, Dead Zone, Cat's Eye, Silver Bullet, Maximum Overdrive. I mean, so
Well,
I
I mean, for
like.
the people who really love this podcast, he was the producer on Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness.
There you go. He was also the producer of Hannibal, for what that's worth. A lot of people don't like that movie, but and he was the producer on Manhunter, which I really like, and you guys didn't like. But my point is, and Barbarella. I mean, De Laurentiis. I think what happened. This is my theory, is that after Dune was a disaster, just massive disaster. I think that it somehow it had such toxicity that it reached back and poisoned his entire resume. So that people were like, "Oh God, De Laurentiis is terrible," and
Well,
so I remember Kong being bad.
This movie had an incredibly troubled production. Like, there wasn't just the thing with the mechanical Kong that we were talking about, but that was part of it. But I mean, that just sort of almost mirrors the stuff on Jaws. I mean, like that, which is funny because this movie was basically made because of Jaws. Like, there was a lawsuit between Dino De Laurentiis and Universal, and
Yeah.
he had to settle off. So there's a reason why this movie has a rep. It's not just because of him. Although I think what you're saying is completely fair, because I mean the guy has been a producer on a lot of movies, and a lot of them are classic and or cult classic. And look, I'm not a huge fan of this movie, but it's definitely not the worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, it's got stuff that I appreciate more, now that I'm looking at it with a more critical eye, shall we say. But I think what you're saying is completely fair. It's not. He doesn't suck from his whole resume doesn't suck.
It's a knee-jerk thing that we do. This isn't you. I mean, but there's a thing where people, they're just sort of like shit that people say about the movies that, on reflection, maybe don't turn out to be all that true, such as Dino De Laurentiis isn't a good producer, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. Basically, you have this sort of cliquishness in ideas when it comes to film. So that was my last thesis. We should totally get our final thoughts on Kong, and then come around for endorsements. So I think we started with Julia. Julia, do you want to share with us what is it? If somebody's listening, what do you want them to go away with as you representing all of female humanity about what to think about?
No pressure.
First of all, they should go away with the fact that no one person can represent all the other people that are of their class, whatever class you're talking about.
I reject your thesis. Do another.
Yes, representing only myself, I can say that I feel like this film is an interesting little snapshot of the 70s mores and cultural ideals, and I don't know if it's. I mean, I think it is a snapshot. It's not like it's not going to be, again, just as I don't represent all women, this does not represent all the 70s. But there's some definitely interesting things about it. I would have liked to have seen more depth to the female character. I would have liked to have seen more exploration of, the political, I think they touched on the political stuff a little bit, but it would have been interesting to have it be, I don't mean on the nose, but just more exploration of it, the Vietnam and all that. But, I think we talked about the fact that the monster is, the ape is a really good ape. I mean, the facial expressions I've talked about a lot. oil company being bad guys. I mean, I'm all over that. It's always going to be a good, a good thing to throw in my book. I like Jeff Bridges. I thought he was pretty sexy, and so those were good things. But there were some dumb things. Like I said, the snake thing is stupid, and I felt like there was just not good reasons for things to happen the way they did. So, it's middling. And then did you say to do endorsement too, or come back around for that?
We'll come back around.
Okay.
But
Yep.
thank you. That's wonderful. Drew, the second guy who wasn't crazy about this.
I believe Tony was next.
Oh no, we had the 2 negatives and the 2 positives. So you were
okay.
next.
All right. I enjoyed this discussion a lot, and I enjoyed reading about this movie a lot. So I think if you are a monsterphile and you love Kong, and I do love King Kong. I love King Kong as a character. The original is one of my favorite movies. And I wouldn't have dreamed of doing this retrospective without discussing this movie, because I think it is an important part of the King Kong mythology. And, every subsequent version of this movie has some of this film in its DNA. So, I think this is important to the mythology of King Kong. That being said, I am not the biggest fan of it, but I greatly appreciated this conversation, and I really did enjoy researching it, and I'm glad that I actually boned up on it so much, because I feel like it made my viewing of it much richer, and I think you can get a lot out of this film from that perspective, even if you are one of the people that don't enjoy it.
Excellent. Tony, to be honest, a lot of people don't even talk about this movie anymore, so it's kind of interesting to go back and look at it. What do you want to leave people with?
I mean, I think it's definitely of a time. I still enjoyed it, and I think watching it more as an adult, you notice totally different things. Great practical effects, even when some of the matting is really not that great. I still think a lot of it's really effective. I think the giant hand is cooler in a lot of ways than I remembered it. They actually got it to pick her up, and that's as stiff as it sometimes is. There's a lot of coolness to that.
Yeah.
I still enjoy it, whether or not it's partially nostalgia. Who am I to say? I don't know, but I still like it. I'm not quite sure. There's people who just truly hate it, despise it, to the point where, in some movies they would spit after they said it, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think there's a lot that is really cool that offsets the stuff that's not as great.
Excellent.
Well, for what it's worth, Tony,
me,
I don't think I hate this movie anymore. I did at a point hate it, so I think I've come around to I'm still on the negative side, but I think I'm a little warmer on it than I used to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you do hate it, it's not,
No, I don't think I hate it. I don't think I hate it anymore, because I think it's, like I said, I think it's important to the whole Kong experience. And sorry, Jason, didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was thinking in a similar way that, the 1992 Dracula, I hated. But now I've come around to hating it a lot less, because I've started to look at it a different way. I don't like it the way I like this movie. I've never hated this movie. What happened with this film, that's Coppola, and that one hasn't been shunned. This film has really been shunned in the years since it's come out, and I think it deserves a second look by our culture, because I think it's a pretty well made and very diverting, very wonderful, old-fashioned Hollywood adventure film that still has things to say about where our culture was in 1976, and it has a giant ape. So I like this movie a lot. So that's where I am now, and it's been really fun to discuss it. Let's do our endorsements. Same direction. Julia, you're still with us? Do you want to endorse something?
Yeah. I really liked the new Beauty and the Beast live action film. I thought it was just beautiful. Really, really neat film. I saw it with my girls. Actually, I saw it with one girl, and the other girl had seen it with her friends. And we just loved it. It's so neat. It's very visually beautiful and magical, and I think for me the singing wasn't excellent, but my girls thought it was fine, so I think that's all right. But the rest of it's just really, really lovely. So if you either have kids or are a kid at heart, for sure catch Beauty and the Beast, which I'm sure you probably have by now if you have kids, because I think everybody did this weekend.
If they like the movie, they'll accept the singing. I mean, remember, they like Gerard Butler in Phantom of the Opera because they're like, we like it. So, if they like it, they'll forgive a lot.
Yeah, Gerard Butler's not. Yeah, no, it's not that bad.
Okay. There's got to be a sliding scale that goes like Gerard Butler, Russell Crowe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Yes. No. Russell Crowe's at the end of the scale, and then on the other side, of course, is Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, and then in between you've got Emma Thompson somewhere. I mean, not Emma Thompson, Emma Watson. Yep. And Emma Thompson. She also sings in this movie.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Drew. What do you have?
Well, over this last weekend, I lost two of my big pop culture icons because both Chuck Berry and Bernie Wrightson died. So I ask of you to listen to some of Chuck Berry's music, and maybe, I was really irked today. I was listening to the classic rock station on my way to work, and I started talking about how important Chuck Berry was to popular music, and they immediately launched into ZZ Top after talking about that. And I was like, look, I know it's the classic rock station. I know you wouldn't need to play your 70s and your 80s, and that's what your demographic is. But don't talk about how important this man's music is and not play it. Like, would it have killed you to play Johnny Be Good this one time? So, even if you think his music is old-fashioned, I think, maybe give it, go and check that out. Listen to that. Take into account how important it is to the language of rock music, and particularly, what it gave us in terms of guitar work. Same thing with Bernie Wrightson, who was a giant in comic book art, and I'm actually kind of aghast because I haven't seen that many people reacting that he died.
He was in Austin as well. He lived here.
Yeah, and I on that note, I would say, like, my personal favorite, the thing that I'm going to go back and look at this week is Cycle of the Werewolf, because that's my favorite thing of his. But I mean, you have Swamp Thing, you have Creepshow, you have Frankenstein. There's like so many cool things that you could be checking out. So two cornerstones of my pop culture, pantheon are gone, and I indulge me this. Just if you haven't checked out their work in a while, go and check it out and maybe appreciate it with new eyes.
Very good. That's fabulous. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Also, just to piggyback on Drew, I mean, if you go back in the Lemmy documentary, Lemmy talks about how he remembers there was a time before there was rock and roll. He's like, look, I grew up, there was not rock and roll, and then there was rock and roll. And he cites Chuck Berry, and he talks about, like, what must it have been like to be this black guy who just goes crazy, plays guitar like this, deals with all this stuff, living in the South, like, where did that even come from? I found that fascinating. Bernie Wrightson as well. Somebody posted the other day that it was only recently that they had discovered his work on Frankenstein, which to me is one of the most beautiful, and just, it's both ghastly and beautiful pieces of artwork. And the pen work, the ink work is just, it's amazing. I don't know of anybody else I think of offhand who's just that deft with ink. Light and shadow, just unbelievable. If you aren't familiar with his work, I would also say I'm with Drew, like, get some Bernie Wrightson education. He also did these amazing promo pieces for the not good Ghost Rider movie, but a lot of that was up on a website and it all disappeared, and people have been posting bits. But I wish that there had been a comic of all of those concepts, because his Ghost Rider pieces that he did to lead up to that movie, his concept art, were just amazing, beautiful pieces of work. I wish that those were in a folio. Maybe they are. Hopefully somebody will say, but
I'm sure eventually, if they aren't, there'll probably be a big book on Marvel movies at one point.
It was weird because there was a website that was, I guess, selling the prints for a while, and then once that website was gone, then I saw I couldn't readily find those images. I think some of them have come back, but yeah, I'm in the same boat with Drew on this one.
Thank you. And by the way, I've seen that Wrightson Frankenstein stuff, and it's really great. Gosh, I became obsessed for reasons completely beyond my own understanding with In Cold Blood in the past week. I I had never really read it, and so I set out to read Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, and then watched the film Capote that Philip Seymour Hoffman won an Oscar for when it came out a number of years ago. Not that many, maybe I want to say it's 2009 or something like that. Anyway, and it's fascinating. It just it's a wonderful look at the mid 60s and you know, justice and Capote's writing is fantastic. So I've been on this In Cold Blood kick, and I really recommend. If you can't, you should read In Cold Blood. It's an easy book to read, and I actually listened to it on audio, and then now I'm watching the movie. But there's like a movie, there's a mini series, there's a movie about the making of about the writing of the book. There's another movie about the writing of the book, so you can see Philip Seymour Hoffman or Toby Jones in the role of Truman Capote writing In Cold Blood. It's so bizarre to me that there are two movies about the writing of this book. And by the way, in those movies, Catherine Keener plays Harper Lee in the one, whereas Sandra Bullock plays Harper Lee in the other. So you get to choose which stunt casting do you want as the best friend of Truman Capote, following him around while he investigates this murder. Good stuff. So I'm on this completely random Capote kick right now. That's it. Okay, I am so thankful that you guys were around to talk King Kong and that we've started this King Kong retrospective. It is so exciting. If you are listening, please come to the Facebook page and tell us if you agree with us or disagree with us. We will totally engage with you. Leave reviews on iTunes because it helps people find the program. Bring your friends and tell them that they need to be listening to the show, and show up. We will totally talk. Thank you so much, everybody.
I, for one, I'm going to try to say less because of the review that we got.
Oh, no. No, you can you can say anything you want. And all right.
Say less? Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that one.
There's a review said we're great, but we say too much. So I'm like, I need to say less.
Now, just for that, I'm going to say after every word.
Nope.
Toastmasters.
It's on.
Please the customer.
All right. That was a positive review. All right. Thank you, everybody. And I will talk to you next week. I can't wait. Also can't wait to figure out what exactly it is that we're going to discuss. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.